helping people cope with and overcome life's challenges. This is Life Transformations with Michael Hart, certified Christian counselor and director of Ottawa's Elim Counselling Services.
Hi, I'm Michael Hart, Director of Elim Counselling Services, a Christian counseling ministry in Ottawa that provides professional counseling from a Christian perspective for a wide variety of issues. And I want to thank you for joining us today on our Life Transformation radio broadcast, that a radio show where chains are broken and lives are renewed. If you're not familiar with Elim, you can find out more about us at elimcounselingministry.com. Elim is spelled E-L-I-M, counseling with 2 L's, ministry.com, and we can be reached by phone at 613-699-1677, 613-699-1677. And today we have another interesting show lined up for you. Today's show is about stepfamilies, and with me in studio today to discuss this show is Melissa Wagat. Welcome, Melissa.
Hi, Michael. So, as you said, the topic today is all about step families.
Yes, and step family, the name, it goes by, those type of family goes by many different names. Some of the very creative names that I've come across is recoupled families, remarried families, binuclear family, synergistic family, reconstructed family, and refabricated families.
And I've even heard blended families. So
yes, and blended families.
So whatever you out there listening call your blended, combined family, we really hope you find this show today very practical. We want to give you some practical suggestions about being in these types of families, whether you're in them currently, you're about to make one, or you have some questions about what's going on. And like we always try to do in this show is we like to turn back to the Bible to look for examples and to get some guidance about how we can deal with the issues we may be experiencing today and to get some advice. So right off the top, Michael, does the Bible talk about step families or have any examples of them?
I think one of the best known example of a step family is the family of Joseph and Mary and Jesus himself. A lot of people do not realize that Jesus was a stepchild.
You know what? It's funny. Until you just mentioned it right now, I never considered him one, but you're so very right. He is.
Absolutely. And because Joseph was not his biological father.
No, you're exactly right.
And I find that we get some insight into how Joseph treated him. Excuse me. We get some insight into how Joseph treated him by a comment that is found in Matthew 13, verse 55, where the critics of Jesus said, "Isn't this the carpenter's son? Isn't his mother's name Mary?" And I think that is a verse that is very, very full of implications, because it meant that Joseph, even though he wasn't his biological father, he had such a relationship with Jesus that people identified him as the carpenter's son.
There's some ownership there. Mm-hmm. So in one of your seminars, Michael, you bring up topics related to step families. And in that, you talk about 4 challenges that are present at the very formation of step families. Do you mind going into what those are?
Well, I think there are some challenges that are there from the very beginning of step families, as you hinted, and I think one of the biggest challenge is a challenge sense of belonging. Like people that comes into step family, they are usually from other families, or they have come out of a situation, either divorce or death, and so they're now coping with a new sense of belonging to something new. And there is a process there of giving up the old and embracing the new. And there's this sense of, where do I really belong? What's my new identity? What's my new identity? Do I identify with the old family or with the new family? And even though people might, on the conscious level, say, yes, I belong to this new family, sometimes the transition is not as easy as that. Sometimes there is still the holding on to the old, still the identifying with the old, and an unwillingness to let go and to identify with the new. So this brings a lot of challenges. I've seen step families where sometimes for children, even though a father is deceased or the father has moved out of their lives, they're still identifying with that father, and as such they are rebelling against accepting the identity of being the father in this new step family, and that creates a lot of conflict. So there is this struggle, the sense of belonging that is often challenged at the beginning, and then there are fragile alliance that is also an issue. Like people sometimes will struggle with loyalty issues, where the struggle is with, I am loyal to my mom, I listen to my biological mom, but I am not going to listen to my stepfather, or vice versa. And so their torn loyalty, there's a sense of being loyal to one party and to the next. Sometimes it's a sense of being loyal to the old family and the old ways of doing things, where people refuse to adopt to a new situation. And I think one of the challenges from the very get-go in a lot of step family is that step families have a very complicated start.
Yes, exactly.
Because there is no truly honeymoon period, if you look at it that way, right? In most couples, when they get married, they have a few months or sometimes years. You get to know each
other and all that stuff, but
Yes.
you're in it day one.
You're in it, and the kids are in it in most cases, and so you have all the challenges and the dynamics that are there from the very beginning, that usually take other couples sometimes years before they get to that stage. So that bring challenges.
Mm-hmm. And you can see it even as the couple, as you're starting, if it's the first time you're having a relationship and you've had your children and you're trying to start this. In your previous dating or married relationships, you probably started off with no kids and everything. So you too are also learning as your kids are learning, and you're kind of trying to grow and figure this all out together. So you can see how that can be challenging. As you say, people are feeling out the waters and what the new normal is going to be like.
Yes, you get to practice with the first child,
Exactly.
And you gradually ease your way into the second and the third, for most couples. But with step families, sometimes it's like you have 6 kids all at once, or 4 kids all at once, and the challenges that comes from raising 4 kids are there right from the very beginning, before the loyalties are established, before the sense of belonging is established, and that in itself can create problems.
Are there other challenges that can be seen in the formation of these new types of families?
I think another challenge would be the difference in doing things. A lot of times when you're in a previous family, there's already an established way of operating, and there are rituals that are established. Like we take our vacations at this time of the year. We visit mom and dad so often.
We eat family dinner together at this time, and the kids do the dishes or whatever.
Yes, so all of those practices are entrenched and established. And now imagine one family from that kind of a background being blended with a family where they never sit at the dining table and eat, where dinner can be at any time, where mom and dad is never visited, or if we see that mom and dad, once every 6 years, we're okay with that. And now we are in a new blended family where one spouse wants to see mom every weekend and to have dinner and to have lunch on every Sunday.
It's a real culture shock, I can imagine, that goes on.
Absolutely, yes.
As the new rules and everything is established, your new family traditions. And any other types of conflicts or challenges that can come up?
There are challenges too with raising of kids, and sometimes too when it comes to discipline, there are different ways of disciplining children, different ways of doing things around the house, different value systems, right? What might be okay in one family and seen as being the norm might be seen as being dishonest in another family system. So that's why I always say to people when, they're coming out of a divorce and they're meeting someone new, it's very important to take the time to know as much about the other person before jumping into a relationship, because a lot of time, a lot of the conflicts that end up happening in step family could be minimized if people would take the time to learn more about the other person's value system, their ways of doing things, their beliefs about raising children, their methods of discipline and so forth. It's important that those things be visited and discussed before.
Mm-hmm. So we just talked a little bit about the challenges step families can face when they're in the middle of forming. Are there typical stages that you see step families go through as they're developing into this new family unit?
Well, Newman in 1992 identified 5 stages that families typically go through that takes them from the stage of fantasy to the stage of resolution. So the first stage is the stage of fantasy, where people come together, they are so much in love, and they believe this is going to be like the Brady Bunch, we come together and we are an immediate family and things that we're going to live happily ever after, coming out of a bad divorce, and now this is the answer, we are going to be so happy. So there's this fantasy stage, but very soon this give way to the second stage, which is the stage of confusion. Now, what just hit us?
Yes.
What's happening here?
My dream has just ended, or just changed,
yes,
I guess.
This fantasy is turning into a nightmare, and there are challenges. So the second stage give way to the stage of conflict, where there is now a lot of ensuing conflict that goes on.
And you can see how that can happen with the challenges we talked about, because you're basically making new norms for this group, right?
Yes.
And you need to have that dialogue of this doesn't work for us, or this is how we did it. So I think though it's conflict, it's probably, if handled appropriately, going to be for the better of the family, because you're figuring things out.
Absolutely. So that is why if conflict is handled properly, most families move on from that eventually and go on to the next stage, which is the stage of they call a stage of coming together, where now the loyalties are becoming more towards the immediate family, and there is this sense of being one. And this brings us to the final stage, the fifth and final stage, which is the stage of resolution, where there is now a new norm, where people are settled into their roles, and where parents are accepted as parents, even for by the children who are not their biological children. And so this resolution takes place. And this is not to say there's going to be happily ever after. They will still have challenges like most families, even biological family, do, but the upheaval, the confusion, the conflict, the stages of high conflict will have ended, and there is now a new peace, a resolution that happens at the end. So for those of you listening to me today who are going through a lot of strife in your relationship, in your step-family relationship, I'd like you to know that sometimes this is just part of the normal progression of things that you have to go through in order to get to the stage of resolution. You have to go through the conflict stage, and if these stages are handled properly, then you get to the stage of resolution. If you're just joining us and you're not familiar with our show, you're listening to the Life Transformation Radio broadcast, the Elim Counseling Service radio show, and I'm your host, Michael Hart. You can reach us at 613-699-1677, and you can find out more about us at elimcounselingministry.com, ELIM for Elim, counseling with 2 L's, ministry.com. There's also a lot of very useful resources on our website where you can read up about different ways of getting help and helpful tips and so on and so forth.
So Michael, we were just talking about the stages that step families go through. And and you described Newman's work, I believe, from 92 as a guide for that, from families going from fantasy to resolution. When I hear things about stages, I always have 2 questions in mind. 1, do people have to go through every stage? And then 2, how long does it typically take?
Right. I think that's a very important question. Two very good questions. Let me say that it's not necessary to go through all this stage, because if you are realistic going into a step family situation where you realize, wow, we are two families coming together and we are going to have conflict, then you might skip the stage of fantasy. Right?
The blinders are off at the beginning.
The blinders are off at the beginning, and you are prepared. We are going into this. We have 6 kids. There are going to be some challenging times ahead of us here, right? There are going to be some fights, and people's feelings are going to get hurt. So that stage, it's not necessarily that every family has to go through the stage of fantasy, but these are typically what we see when in most of the studies, that people enter into the situation underestimating the stage. And what was your second question?
The other one was always, how long does it take? So for people out there who may be in the midst of this, how long am I going to be in this kind of stage?
It's hard to give a hard and fast number that will fit every circumstance. There are some people that work through the stages very quickly within a year or two. There are some people that it might take 10 years and they're still going through the stage. It all depends on how conflict is handled, how the family seeks out help, and how willing families are to talk about their situation. If in a family there are two avoiders who avoid issues, and you have the issues, the elephants in the room, and people are not talking about the issues, then things can get worse and the period will take longer. But typically, we are told by psychologists that it takes between 5 to 7 years for most step family to go through from the stage of fantasy to the stage of resolution.
So for people listening, what strategies or activities should they be engaged in to be successful as they're blending these families together? What do they need to do?
Well, I think there are a number of things that are absolutely essential if they are going to be successful. And I think one of the first essential thing is that they need to, first of all, as you talk about, don't go into the relationship with false expectation, right? It's good to admit the complexity from the very beginning. Do not pretend that a step family is the same as a biological family. Discuss the differences and divided loyalties that we talk about. Discuss the challenge sense of identity, right? And all of these things need to be put on the table. So if a person goes in realizing that these complexities are there, they stand a better chance of being successful in the relationship compared to if they go in with false expectation, expecting that it's just going to be smooth sailing. Once they get into the stage of confusion and conflict, the next stage of conflict following that, they're going to be feeling like giving up, because it's like, wow, this should not be happening. Why are we having these conflicts?
Something must be wrong with us.
Something must be wrong. I thought he was, my soulmate, but he turns out to be the devil, and there can be these kind of personal attack that goes on. When in truth and in fact, a lot of what goes on is just part of the process. I think too, one very important factor that is often missed, and I think this is the key determinant of success, is that the quality of the couple's relationship will determine the success or failure of the family.
So what advice then would you give for couples to improve the quality of their relationship?
I think the first advice that I would give is that the couples need to provide a unified front to the children. Right? If children start seeing division between the parents, where they're seeing mom is over here and dad is over there, and they're at odds all the time and they can't agree on anything, and mom says that one child should do this and dad steps in and says no, he's not going to do that and he's not going to be punished, and there is this kind of conflict and division among the parents, then children are going to take sides.
Yeah, and I was going to say that divided loyalty challenge is just reinforced.
Right, and magnified. And so you're going to find that children are not going to want to identify with a step parent, because they're saying, well, if mom is in so much conflict with him or her, I am on mom's side. and the hatred and animosity of the children towards the stepfamily towards the step parent when they see this coming from mom is going to be amplified.
So, are there any helpful tips or reminders that you'd give to step families that they should bear in mind as they're going through the unification process?
Absolutely. I think there are a number of tips that I would like to point to. But just before I do that, I would like to say, if you're just joining us, you're listening to the Life Transformation radio broadcast, and I am your host, Michael Hart of Elim Counselling Services, and with me in studio today is Melissa Wagot, and we are discussing step families, which go by many different names: blended families, synergistic families, prefabricated families, and many different names. But we are talking about step families, and if you're not familiar with Elim, you can find out more about us at Elim, ELIM, counselingministry.com. You can reach us by phone at 613-699-1677. We provide professional counseling for a wide variety of issues. We are trained professional counselors who hold professional membership with the Canadian Counseling and Psychotherapy Association. So, Melissa, you had asked me just before I took that little break, what are helpful reminders that step families should bear in mind? Mm-hmm. I think the main thing is to be realistic. Try to be realistic with your expectations, right? There is going to be conflict. There is going to be tension, and this is a natural part of the process. If there is this realization that what I'm going through is normal and we just have to work through it, then the chances are our success is heightened. As a matter of fact, they have done studies that show that step families who goes to counselors who normalize their conflict, they stand a much better chance of being successful than if they go to a counselor who treat the conflict as if it is something very strange and unnatural. So I think a good counselor should be, from the very beginning, say what you're going through is normal. You're trying to put two families together, and this is not an easy thing to do. It's going to take time, and the conflict and the tension that is there is a natural part of the process. So be realistic. That's one of the first thing I try to do, is to normalize conflict as being a natural part of the process. And I think a second thing that needs to be done is that help the family. A family should create a team approach.
And do you mean a team as a whole family unit, the parents, or everyone? Everyone
together, a team approach. The children, the parents, have a meeting at the very beginning or wherever you are in the process and say, look, we're a family. It's going to be it's going to be normal for us to have conflicts. But remember, we are on the same team. Mm-hmm. We are not enemies. The enemies are the problems, and we together are fighting against these conflicts, are fighting against these challenges to try to make our living situation better. So if there can be this sense or this attempt at creating a team approach, then conflicts and challenges are likely to be handled more successfully than if you have this divided approach. And I think a lot of time step families get stuck because they fall into this rut where it's me and my kids versus you and your kids.
Mm-hmm. Versus it's us and our kids.
Right, absolutely. And so, but what's interesting when we read about the story of Jesus, for those of you who are just joining us, we read Matthew 13, verse 55, and we said that Jesus was a stepchild. And what we see here is that Joseph embraced Jesus as his only son, to the extent that even the public was aware of it, where they said, isn't this the carpenter's son? Isn't this his mother named Mary? And aren't his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? Mm-hmm. So we see that the concept of Jesus' family was that even though he was the biological child of Joseph, there was this unity that was sensed by the public that they saw him as being the carpenter's son. unfortunately, there are step families out there where children don't feel as if they're the son or the daughter of the person that is not their biological parent, because they're treated differently.
They're just a tenant in the house.
They feel as if they're a tenant, and they know that there is more love shown to the others. So there is this feeling that I am different, I am not as loved. So I think one of the very important thing for step families to do to minimize the challenges is to make sure that there is fair treatment of all the child, that you build a sense of a team approach. We are together, we are one family, versus the me and my child versus you and your child. Because once you get into that dynamic, there are a lot of challenges with that.
And you can see how all those things relate back to the challenges we talked about earlier,
Right.
with the divided loyalties and the conflict, etc. Quickly before we run out of time, do you have any tips for people in step families regarding discipline?
Right. I think one of the most important pointers that I can give to step family is that at the very beginning, before the loyalties issues are settled, especially in the very beginning, it's very important that any discipline that is going to be given to a child be given by the biological parent. Because I think a lot of times step families, they go into these situations and they have said their vows at the altar, and there's this concept in the step parent mind that I am now the father or I am now the mother of these children, so I have the right to enforce discipline. Remember that in the minds of the child, you're not their father or you're not their mother as yet. And it takes time for that loyalty to build. So while that is being established, the biological parent should do the discipline of his or her own child. The parents should also agree on principles of methods of discipline and how they're going to handle situation. They agree together, but the enforcement of the discipline should be done by the biological parent. I see here that we're quickly out of time. I wish we could say a lot more about that, but we're out of time today. And Melissa, I want to thank you for joining us on today's show and for helping us discuss this topic.
You're welcome.
So you have been listening to the Life Transformation Radio Show, and I'm your host, Michael Hart. Melissa Wagat was with me here in studio today discussing this important issue of step family. We want to thank you for listening to this edition of Life Transformation and encourage you to give us a call at 613-699-1677 if you have questions or comments, or if you have a topic you'd like to see discussed, or if you'd like us to do a seminar at your church or your community group, you can call us at 613-699-1677. Until next time, this is your host, Michael Hart, praying that God would grant you happiness in all your relationships and to keep you sound in mind and pure in heart. God bless you until next time, and thank you for listening.